Hello listeners, this video discusses Fasting Feasting. It is a novel written by Indian writer Anita Desai. This channel has discussed Anita Desai's Where Shall We Go This Summer. The link of that novel is given in the description box. The novel's study notes are displayed on screen for viewers' benefit. Let us see a small note about Anita Desai. She was born in the year 1937. She is an Indian novelist and a professor of humanities at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Her books are being shortlisted for the Booker Prize 3 times, and she has received a Sahitya Academy Award in the year 1978 for her novel Fire on the Mountain. She has received British Guardian Prize for her novel The Village by the Sea in the year 1983. Her other famous works include The Peacock, Voices in the City, and an anthology of short stories, Games at Twilight. Her novel In Custody was adapted as a film in the year 1993. Some of her other novels like Clear Light of Day, The Village by the Sea, Journey to Ithaca, The Zigzag Way are some of her popular works. Let us see an outline of this novel, Fasting Feasting. This novel is divided into 2 acts. Part 1 is set in a strict and authoritarian household in India, and Part 2 is set in a cold and isolating home in the Massachusetts suburbs. Both the sections of the novel are told in third-person omniscient point of view. The novel chronicles 2 members of the same Indian family. This novel was published in the year 1999 in Great Britain by Chatto and Windus, and it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize for Fiction in the year 1999. Let us learn the characters of this novel. Uma is an oppressed heroine, and she is the never married daughter of a middle class family in rural India. At a young age, Uma disappoints her parents by enthusiastically pursuing her school studies despite her failing grades, and she had no interest to do any of the domestic duties. Against her interest and will, her mother and father removed her from the convent school. They forced her to stay at home and take care of her baby brother. He is Arun. After years, when Uma attained her marriage age, her parents struggled to get her a husband because she wasn't pretty, or she wasn't an accomplished person in life, or she wasn't flirtatious like her sister Aruna. After several failed marriage attempts, Uma's parents resigned their daughter to a life at home to take care of them. They also neglect her physical and emotional needs. They demand her energies and allow her few freedoms. Uma loves poetry, she loves to wander, and she is a fearless woman and who is curious to know about new people and situations. Next is Arun. Arun is Uma's brother and the youngest child of Mama and Papa. After his birth, his Mama and Papa proudly invest all their hopes and dreams upon him, and they also provide all their attention and forces him to study until he has no energy left. Arun lethargically goes to university in Massachusetts. There he frees himself from his family. He seeks personal freedom by withdrawing from social interactions from both Indian and American society. Aruna is a pretty, confident, and a socially ambitious younger sister of Uma and the second daughter of Mama and Papa. Aruna gets more marriage proposals and she marries Arvind, who's a wealthy, handsome man from Bombay. She moves to Bombay and lives the life of a perfectionist and becomes a wealthy, westernized, socialized who visits her family only on occasion. She behaves unkind with her own sister and she criticizes her own family members. Mama is the mother of Uma, Aruna, and Arun. Throughout the novel, her first name is never revealed. She is just called Mama throughout the novel. Her role in the novel is defined as a wife and a mother. She is a proud, submissive wife. Her opinions are seen different than her husband's, and her mission in life is to cater to her husband's needs and to work with him in controlling the destinies of their three children. Later, as Mama gets older, she gets close with Uma. It was after one particular incident that they get closer, that is, after the death of her niece Anamika. Papa is the father of Uma, Aruna, and Arun. He is an insecure middle class legal magistrate. He grew up in great poverty and he delights in reminding his children that he worked very hard in school to climb the social ladder and make a better life for himself and his family. He is threatened by modern ideas of women's liberation. He is also very contented to allow his wife to wait on him and obey his requests. He habitually criticizes and neglects Uma, particularly for her physical needs. Mrs. Patton is the sister of Mrs. O. Henry, who is a wife to Mr. Patton, and the mother of Rod and Melaine. And they are the host who invites Arun to stay with them and their family in Massachusetts. Mr. Patton is the husband of Mrs. Patton and the father of Melaine and Rod. He is a full-time worker in an office. Mr. Patton does housekeeping and cooking to his wife. He places great value on work and he frequently gets frustrated by his family for not being more in line and productive. Mr. Patton only shows interest with his son Rod and he neglects his wife and daughter. Melaine is the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Patton and the sister of Rod. She is struggling with bulimia and anorexia. Bulimia is a serious eating disorder. Anorexia is also an eating disorder which is characterized by an abnormally low body weight. And this disorder is unnoticed by her parents. Arun, who stays in their house, becomes preoccupied with Melaine's bad nutrition and her defensive attitude. Rod is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Patton and the brother of Melaine. He is short-tempered and unemotional. He betrays little reaction to the conflicts and tension in his house. Though he knows about Melaine's eating disorder, he accepts it as an unfortunate reality. He is an athletic and he always works out and watches sports. For him, sports are an escape from the difficult reality of his family life. Anamika is the beautiful, graceful, intelligent daughter of Lily Aunt and Bakul Uncle. She is the niece to Mama and Papa and the cousin to Uma, Aruna and Arun. She is the favorite girl of the family. She wins a scholarship to Oxford, but her parents don't even consider to allow her to go. When she grows, she gets many marriage proposals. Her parents, Lily Aunt and Bakul Uncle, marry her off to a rich educated man from another town. But unfortunately, her marriage proves tragic because her husband and mother-in-law treat her like a household servant. They beat her on a regular basis. Eventually, she becomes infertile from beatings, and after 25 years of marriage, she is found burned to death on her porch. But the novel did not disclose the reason or the cause of Anamika's death. Lily Aunt and Bakul Uncle, they are the parents of Anamika. There are other characters like Mira Masi, Ramu, Mrs. Ho Henry, Mother Agnes, Mrs. Joshi, Dr. Dutt, Aya, Lakshmi. Let us see those characters when we deal the summary of the novel. The novel totally has 27 chapters. And as I earlier mentioned, the novel also contains two parts, that is divided into two parts. Part 1 is set in a strict and authoritarian household in India, And part 2 is set in a cold and isolating home in Massachusetts suburbs. The novel begins with the narrator's flashback, which explores Uma's quest to find independence and identity within the repressive and regimented household atmosphere of Mama and Papa. Her parents are obsessed with maintaining a traditional authority in the home, and they are often described as one conflated unit, Mama and Papa together. The novel mostly centers Uma's character. She is a simple minded and limited intellectual girl. She is pulled from her beloved convent school after repeatedly failing in her exams. And as Uma repeatedly fails in her studies, her parents wanted her to get her married. To the eyes of the society, Uma is both failed in her studies and also could not make up her life in finding her own man. While her younger brother Arun, he goes to pursue his education, and her younger sister Aruna is married off to a dazzling and rich husband in Bombay. Uma always remains confined to her parents' home, where she lives as a virtual servant, accommodating her parents' ceaseless whims and commands. She longs for great freedom and independence. She finds short term escape through poetry because she loves to write poems, and she takes a journey to an ashram through a volunteer at a church bazaar. But all of these escapes only short lived, and in order to escape from her parents' household, she wanted to accept the job offered by Dr. Dutt. Her parents disagreed to any of her attempts in establishing a separate identity for herself. The next part 2, explores Arun's own difficulty and his quest to find his independence and freedom from familial obligation in America. As he finishes his school, he is forced by circumstances and his parents' arrangements to rent a home in the Patton family home during the summer break. In America, she was into a brand of American familial alienation and dysfunction. The description of the American landscape in the novel illustrates sterile suburban streets, endless shopping malls and strip malls, and cars advertising their drivers' dreams and also priding with bumper sticker slogans. Arun is lost in the daily pattern. Arun is stuck in yet another problematic familial web. He struggles to find privacy and independence within the family. His relationship with Mrs. Patton, who is the matriarch of the Patton household, strains due to miscommunication and misunderstanding. Let us see the summary of this novel. The novel starts in a small town in India in the late 1970s. Uma and her younger sister Aruna are growing in a traditional Indian household. Uma and Aruna has a brother named Arun, and their parents are called Mama and Papa. They try to control the destinies of their daughters by teaching them domestic, traditionally feminine skills. Uma has no interest with studies and takes little interest in marriage or household chores. She loves to attend her convent school despite her failing grades. The children's father, Papa, he is a middle class government magistrate with a fragile ego. He dominates his family by dictating the family's daily activities and everyone's futures. Uma's parents show little patience with Uma. Uma's mother prides herself as a wife of an important man, and she cooperates with Papa on almost every issue. The family, after Arun's birth, the parents demand Uma to leave her school in order to take care of her baby brother. Uma then, in order to escape from this, she runs away to the convent school and she begs Mother Agnes to talk Mama and Papa into letting her back into school. Mother Agnes is the mother superior at the convent school where Uma attends as a child. Uma has great respect for Mother Agnes. When Uma runs to her to seek help against Mama Papa's will, Mother Agnes tries to encourage Uma to accept her domestic responsibilities happily. Mother Agnes also involves Uma in church activities. And when Mother Agnes gives this advice, Uma has her first seizure on the convent floor. Seizure is a sudden strong attack of an illness, especially one affecting the brain. In other terms, seizure is a sudden uncontrolled body movements and changes in behavior that occur because of abnormal electrical activity in the brain. As Uma started to serve her parents and also take care of the domestic chores at house, her beautiful cousin Anamika has got the opportunity to go to Oxford University. Her parents are Lily Auntie and Bakul Uncle. Both Lily and Bakul they denied to send Anamika to pursue her studies at Oxford. And instead of taking this as a choice, they instead take her into marriage to a wealthiest, most educated man. And later, after the marriage, Uma and her parents hear that Anamika's husband and mother in law beat her and treat her like a servant. And as Uma grows up, men do not show any interest on her, and the men who come to seek alliance at their house they prefer Uma's younger sister Aruna. Uma gets 3 marriage alliances that includes 2 dowry scams, and one old man married her and then abandons her. Later, Mama and Papa give up on trying to marry Uma. Meanwhile, her sister Uma receives many marriage proposals and she chooses Arvind, who's a wealthy man from Bombay. Her marriage was expensive with ceremonies. Aruna leaves for a new life in Bombay and she visits her parents' house occasionally. And whenever she visits her parents, she acts superior to her family, especially with her sister Uma. Arun, who is given great care by all the family members, he is greatly cared and given attention. Arun studies to the point of exhaustion every night under the supervision of his forceful papa. Arun is expressionless and he is a vegetarian since his childhood, and due to this reason, his parents see him as a weak and old fashioned boy. Meanwhile, his sister Uma, she's neglected and confined. Whenever it's possible, she tries to get away from home. On one occasion, her relative Mira Miza, who's a religious widow, travels to the country freely. She tricks Mama Papa into letting her bring Uma with her to an ashram. And as Uma visits there, she wanders around freely and happily for 1 month. And after a month, Mama and Papa send her cousin Ramu to bring her back to their house. Seeing Uma's condition, women in the community they try to bring Uma out of her entrapped family life, and they start to invite her to socialize and work with them. One such occasion is when Dr. Dat comes to Mama and Papa's house to invite Uma to come work with her, but Mama and Papa refuse to send Uma. Helpless Uma, on one occasion when her eyes became painful, her parents refuses her to send or allow her to seek medical care. After a while, one night, Mama and Papa hear that Anamika has been found dead. She was burned to death on her porch. The novel does not reveal whether her death is suicide or murder. Lily Aunt and Bakul Uncle visit to distribute Anamika's ashes in the sacred river. The novel now switches on to focus on Arun. After much of hard work, Arun wins a scholarship to study in America. He goes to Massachusetts. He spends his first year in school by himself, and in the following summer, Arun reluctantly stays with an American family who's Mr. Patton and Mrs. Patton and their children Rod and Melaine. Mrs. Patton welcomes Arun warmly. After some few days of stay, Arun finds how Mrs. Patton struggles against the strong will of her husband. Mr. Patton, he's an athletic, he's a self oriented person. He ignores his family, he focuses on work, working out, and also playing sports. Mrs. Patton likes Arun and she takes him for shopping. She also insists Arun to teach her on how to go vegetarian. Meanwhile, Arun becomes disgusted and distraught by the American culture, and he also finds that Melaine, the daughter of Patton, is bulimic. Bulimia is a serious eating disorder, and Arun seeks help from Mrs. Patton and tries to describe her or make her understand what's going wrong with Melaine. Mrs. Patton neglects her daughter and never took her problem seriously. Toward the end of the summer, Arun and Melaine go with Mrs. Patton to a pond. Mrs. Patton enjoys bathing in the pond and she is always obsessed with sun tanning. Meanwhile, Arun finds Melaine's disappearance. He finds her half conscious in a pile of her own vomit, and Mrs. Patton, when she runs to the spot, she is shocked at what she sees. Consequently, Melaine enters into a rehabilitative institution. Meanwhile, Rod leaves for college. Mr. Patton takes a new job. Meanwhile, Mrs. Patton becomes interested in Eastern spirituality. Arun receives a package from his sister Uma, and the package was sealed carefully. But he leaves all that to Mrs. Patton and he returns to school at the university. This is how the novel ends. The symbols used in this novel are water, that is river, and seizures. Throughout the novel, submersion in water repeats as it represents freedom from the constraints of society, family, and the self. Especially the character of Uma, who is restricted and unappreciated by her family and society, draws to the water's edge where she sees Miramisa bathing in the sacred river that runs through their village. Uma, with no fear, she swims inside the river, and even when her parents warn her, she would not hear. At one point in her life, when there are no more prospects of education or marriage, she deliberately seeks escapism from her mama and papa. And whenever she feels neglected and trapped, she is drawn to the river, to the feeling of sinking, as if the river draws her to death, and she finds it to be an escapism. Similarly, Melaine's character in the novel is entrapped by her emotional turmoil, that is, her eating disorder, and her parents were inattentive to her and they did not give her any medical care. And to ignore all that, she spends long nights in the bathtub to escape. Similarly, Uma's brother Arun is trapped in America by the memories of his family. Arun finds peace when he swims in a pond outside the Patton's house. He feels calm and freed from reality. The next symbol in the novel is seizures. Seizures represents Uma's illness. Right from her early age, Uma fails to meet her family and the society's standards of self-restraint, beauty, and femininity. When she tries to escape back to her convent school, Uma had her first seizure. just after Mother Agnes tells Uma that she can do nothing to fight Mama Papa on the matter of her education, and her mother blames the convent school for causing Uma's epilepsy, and then always take this as a justification for keeping Uma at home and out of school. Epilepsy is seizure, which is a disorder of the brain. The themes in the novel include gender and social roles, family life and individual freedom, tradition. In order to represent tradition, the author represents India versus modernity, that is the westernized nation America. And most frequently, tradition is associated with India, rural, home, extended family, poverty, and fasting, whereas modernity is associated with Western, urban, individuality, commercialism, feasting. And this is how the novel's title has come. Feasting refers to American lifestyle, fasting refers to Indian lifestyle, that is poverty. And the novel's characters such as Mama and Papa, they are from rural, humble roots, and they hold to the traditional values. They place less value on daughters' education, and they give more respect and value on daughters' obedience, and also they prepare them for marriage. Whereas American society places high expectations on women, while Melaine is not being pressured by her parents to marry as Uma and Aruna, she is presumed by American ideals of beauty to achieve unhealthy thinness. And Patton's family, especially Mr. Patton, observing Arun's vegetarianism, he could not approve his wife, Mrs. Patton, to accept her wish of becoming vegetarian, because according to Mr. Patton, vegetarianism represents a threat to the American way. Mrs. Patton also ignores to become a vegetarian because her husband won't approve it. Next theme is loneliness and togetherness. Loneliness affects many characters in the novel, especially Uma and Arun. In Indian society, individuals like Uma experience mental isolation within tight knit families, and it is observed that togetherness in Indian society, especially within families, doesn't always solve the loneliness of the individual. And Uma, in order to attain family harmony, she keeps herself isolated because her values are not respected or heard. Uma is constantly in company with her parents or her other family members, yet she is lonely and isolated within those relationships. And Arun's character is similarly isolated within his family. Similarly, in American family, Melaine is also isolated in her feelings, and her struggle is as the same as Uma. Throughout the novel can be seen as a comparison of India and American traditional lifestyle. Hope this video helps. If you have query, please write it down. And if you have any suggestion to make videos, please write it down on the comment section below. Thank you for listening.